out like two vast wings. It raised the whip and the thongs whined and cracked. Fire came from its nostrils, but Gandalf stood firm. "You cannot pass," he said. The orc stood still, and a dead silence fell. "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Udun, go back to the shadow. You cannot pass." The Balrog made no answer. The fire in it seemed to die, but the darkness grew. It stepped forward slowly onto the bridge, and suddenly it drew itself up a great height, and its wings were spread from wall to wall. But still Gandalf could be seen, glimmering in the gloom. He seemed small and altogether alone, gray and bent like a wizened tree before the onset of a storm. From out of the shadow a red sword leaped, flaming. Glamdring glittered white in answer. There was a ringing clash and a stab of white fire. The Balrog fell back, and its sword flew up in molten fragments. The wizard swayed on the bridge, stepped back at pace, and then again stood still. "You cannot pass," he said. With a bound, the Balrog leaped full upon the bridge. Its whip whirled and hissed. "He cannot stand alone," cried Aragorn suddenly, and ran back along the bridge. "Elendil," he shouted, "I am with you! Gandalf! Gondor!" cried Boromir, and leaped after him. At that moment Gandalf lifted his staff, and crying aloud, he smote the bridge before him. The staff broke asunder and fell from his hand. A blinding sheet of white flame sprang up. The bridge cracked. Right at the Balrog's feet it broke, and the stone upon which it stood crashed into the gulf, while the rest remained, poised, quivering like a tongue of rock thrust out into emptiness. With a terrible cry, the Balrog fell forward, and its shadow plunged down and vanished. But even as it fell, swung its whip, and the thongs lashed and curled about the wizard's knees, dragging him to the brink. He staggered and fell, grasped vainly at the stone, and slid into the abyss. "Fly, you fools!" he cried, and was gone. The fires went out, and blank darkness fell.
How large the Balrog was characterized in the novel, and also how large it showed on screen. Its huge fire sword clanged off Gandalf's elven sword, and the fire sword fragmented, and basically Gandalf's sword broke the Balrog's sword. That's what I wanted to talk about there, about the importance of elven weapons, I guess, and not just not the swords, but there's also other things that come into play later on with how they did it in the novel here. In a way, for me in the film, and we'll talk about it more when the differences come up, but it almost looked like Gandalf had a chance at getting away if he just ran faster after he turned his back on the Balrog. Here in the novel,